From Square Two, this is What's Wrong with Revenue. I'm Mike Lieberman, CEO at Square Two, and along with my longtime friend and business partner, Eric Kalis, this show answers the question many CEOs, CMOs, CROs, and business owners are asking, what's wrong with revenue? New shows drop every Thursday morning. You can find the video version of the show on YouTube at the Square Two Marketing channel, on our website at the What's Wrong with Revenue page located in the footer, or on our free streaming service Square Two Plus, both located at square2marketing.com. You can subscribe to the show or subscribe to Square Two Plus, and we'll email you new show content as soon as it's published. You can also submit questions to the show on the What's Wrong with Revenue page of our website. Eric and I answer questions every single episode. You can also find the podcast version of the show on all your favorite podcast platforms. Enjoy the show. Hey everybody, welcome to Season 2, Episode 16 of What's Wrong with Revenue. I'm Mike Lieberman, CEO and Chief Revenue Scientist here at Square Two, and I am thrilled to have a special guest here with me today, Cade Wilcox. Cade is our senior engagement specialist. He really handles all things sales at Square Two. He's been with us for the past couple of months. He's really killing it. Eric's out and about, and I thought, what a great person to cover this show with me today. Cade, say hi to everybody.
Hey guys, thanks for having me.
No problem. So today, Season 2, Episode 16, we're going to be talking about how to brainstorm late-stage sales opportunities to close them faster. And like I said, Cade handles everything sales at Square Two these days, and I thought he'd be the perfect person to chip in and help out as we talk about this pretty important motion when it comes to helping close more deals. So let me take care of all of my housekeeping. If you're interested in the show, check it out on SquareTube's YouTube channel. All of Season 1 and Season 2 are hosted on YouTube. We post new shows every single Thursday. You can like us, you can subscribe to us, you can leave us comments there, so go check out the show on YouTube. We also have the show on Square Two's free streaming service, Square Two Plus, located at square2marketing.com/Square2PLUS. It's a Netflix-style streaming service where we host all of our audio and video content. We have channels for CEOs, CROs, CMOs. We have a HubSpot channel, and we're going to shortly have a really cool pickleball theme video channel as well. For any of you guys interested in pickleball, as soon as that's ready, I'll let everybody know you can go check it out. You can subscribe to Square Two Plus. When new stuff is posted, you'll get notified via email, just like Netflix. Go check it out. And if you're into audio content, we are available on all your favorite audio and podcast platforms, iTunes, Stitcher, Apple. Go check it out. You can download the show and enjoy it at your convenience. So what we're going to talk about today is revenue is a team game. New customers are rarely closed by a single individual these days. Prospects are looking for an experience that makes them feel special, valued, and important. And you mentioned the fact that they want to get to know you, they want to like you, they want to trust you. In fact, I'll argue that no one's buying anything from you, regardless of what you sell, until they know, like, and trust you. And if you have a single person carrying the ball from beginning to end, it's a little old school. And when we started recommending weekly sales opportunity reviews as a part of a weekly revenue team meeting, we had such a tremendous response that it seemed like it was worth making this one of the episodes in Season 2. So today, we're going to brainstorm a couple of ways to get your deals over the finish line and provide a consistent way to focus your team on closing deals and closing them faster. And in addition, these conversations should not be only about new customer revenue, but also current customer revenue too. So we'll show you how to bring these two important revenue streams together. And these should all be geared around your sales process, and that sales process should be remarkable. So adding this kind of conversation to your weekly revenue team meetings, and we'll remind you guys what weekly revenue team meetings are in a second, this is going to really help you grow revenue much more consistently. So what I hope to cover in the show today is how to lead a revenue review conversation, because obviously that's important. Who leads this section of the meeting? Who attends this section of the meeting? How are the what are the goals of having a session like this? And how detailed do you need to go? How many opportunities do you need to talk about? How do you make this a really effective portion of your revenue team meeting? So, Cade, welcome to the show. I usually like to let guests and Eric just provide some initial thoughts to what we're going to be covering today. So not really a monologue, but you know what we're talking about? How do you feel about this idea of using the revenue team meeting to do some brainstormers on late stage opportunities?
Yeah, I think it's really critical. I mean, I think what makes some organizations extremely good at sales and others maybe not so good at sales is intentionality. And so both intentionality in the sales process in terms of the person managing the sales process and dealing with prospects, but then in regards to today's show, even intentionality internally as there's a collaborative effort to close more deals and like you said early on, make that sales experience remarkable for the prospect.
Yeah, really cool. So let's just review the revenue team meeting real quick. For some people maybe who missed the show about the revenue team meeting or don't know what we're talking about. So RGS, which is Square 2's revenue generation system that we use internally to handle clients, and that we are now offering as a coaching service for clients that want to come in a different way and learn a revenue generation system. Everybody has a weekly L10 revenue team meeting. L10 is a style meeting from EOS. I actually got back from the EOS conference on Friday, an amazing time out there in Indianapolis with all the EOSers. Cade, it reminded me of the early days of Inbound. So just to give you some perspective on what's going on with EOS, it's a really cool, thriving and interesting community. But EOS teaches this concept of a level 10 meeting where you start with a 5-minute segue. And Kate, if you correct me if I get the sequence wrong here, a 5-minute segue just to get to know each other, break the ice, warm everybody up a little bit. Then they go into kind of another 5 minutes on headlines and kind of what's going on. Go over their numbers. So a quick review of numbers, whether it's on track or off track. And then in this case, we do this opportunity review. After the opportunity review, they go heavily into IDS, where we kind of really dig deep onto any of the issues that have come up in any of the previous sections. And then at the end, wrap up and off you go. It's usually a 90-minute meeting. So the section of the revenue team meeting we're going to talk today is this opportunity review section, which maybe should take somewhere between 15 and 20 minutes, depending on how big your company is and how you want to structure this. But we found that a lot of the sales organizations that we've worked with have only limited insight and transparency into really the specific details of what's going on with some of these late stage opportunities. And I'll just preface this by saying late stage opportunities on the customer side and on the prospect side. So when we're talking about a revenue team meeting, we're talking about revenue from new prospects and revenue from current customers. So keep that in mind for context here. And if you're using a CRM, there's good visibility through the CRM in terms of where these deals are and who has access to them and what's going on with them and some of the activities and those types of things. But you never really get the full story from the CRM. I mean, Cade, you manage the CRM for Square 2. Maybe you could comment a little bit on the difference between what you know and what you're active with these prospects as opposed to what's in the CRM. And you can comment on that a little bit now if you want.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot to be said here in this particular question, but the parts that we review beyond the CRM are important because the CRM is only one picture. And so I use the CRM religiously every single day. I'm tracking my emails, I'm tracking my notes. Every prospect meeting we have is documented and stored within the CRM. Everything is there. Like I said, all email communication, we're moving it through the deal pipeline so we know when something's in discovery or a diagnostic or at the different stages of our pipeline. So the CRM is really critical. But in terms of the L10 meeting, we're also looking at more of a global view of what we're doing on a monthly basis. And the way we document that's an actual Google sheet where we're looking at projected revenue by month. And it gives us an entirely different look and perspective at kind of where we're trending towards our goals for that specific month. The CRM doesn't really show you that view, even though it's an extremely important part of our sales process. So that monthly revenue sheet that's in Google Sheets for us, where we look at current client revenue, like you said, it's not just new prospects, but it's also our existing customer base, as well as new prospects shows us more of kind of a global view of what a month is going to shake out like towards our projected goals. So those are the two more critical parts of it. And then you mentioned just kind of what our 90-minute meeting looks like. We use 90.0 and IO, and that also gives us some unique data points when we look at our data and how we're tracking on a weekly basis. So those are kind of the three components that we're looking at as it relates to the revenue conversation.
Yeah, just to provide some clarification for what Kate said. So our L10 revenue team meeting does have a scorecard, and there's data related to our performance. We're actually doing a projected revenue to date for the month. So there's data in our scorecard that we cover in that meeting. And then we also, in addition to the sheet that Kate's talking about, we have various dashboards in HubSpot that also provide us access to some of this revenue and forecasting related data. But Kate, what I really wanted to dig a little more deeply into is the details of those opportunities that are close to close. I find that while every email and every call is, you do a good job with notes, and obviously all the emails are in there, and I can see the full chronology of the prospect moving along, I might not be able to get all the nuance of where that opportunity is without talking to you, right? And that's what I think you want to get uncovered in this brainstorming around late stage sales opportunities are, I know you had a conversation with him and with him. I know you had a conversation with the prospect, and some notes made it into the CRM, and I kind of know where we are, but I want to hear from you context of that conversation. I want to dig into this a little bit. Like, what exactly did they say? Who was on the call? Like, sometimes all those details are not in even the best CRMs. There's nuances to these relationships that you're building with prospects that I think it's almost impossible to get all that information into the CRM. And the other thing that I really find valuable in these particular conversations is, what do we need to do to get the deal closed, right? And I think specifically Square 2, we do a lot of team selling, so it might be different for us than maybe for some other organizations. Like, you're on the call, I'm on the call, our president and director of client services is in a lot of these calls. So you're already getting a lot of feedback from us, and we're having conversations through chat and offline in between meetings to kind of brainstorm how to serve these prospects well. But I'm thinking in a lot of organizations, you might not have that. You might have sales reps who are kind of on their own with these opportunities, and they don't really get a chance to talk about the nuances of this particular deal or get multiple angles and ideas on how to push it over the finish line. And I think that's the real value here. Can you talk about that for a minute?
Yeah, I think you highlight something that's really important on the collaborative nature. And there's really two parts of it that I think. First of all, when you think of the prospect experience they're having, if you're an organization that has multiple people that can touch the sales process, it creates a much more remarkable experience for the prospect than having a series of meetings that have different purposes, but they're only dealing with one person. I believe one of the reasons that Square 2 wins so many of our deals is because of that aspect of creating a remarkable experience for our prospects. They're not just dealing with a salesperson, right, who's stewarding the process and, setting meetings up and tracking notes and, submitting things and all of that nature. All that's important, but they're getting to experience the entirety of our team and you and Kristen, our president. And so as the collaborative nature of our process goes, that really matters. Now, when you transition back to what we're doing internally in terms of our weekly meeting, also, it's very collaborative. What I love about this particular section of the meeting that you're talking about is it really gives us plenty of space and time to collaborate and be creative in addressing whatever the opportunity is. The first opportunity we always discuss is our existing clients. What are we doing to serve them? What unique opportunities does it exist to add to their retainer or their project or whatever it is, their goals and objectives. And it gives the team, the revenue team, an opportunity to speak into that. A lot of people, in some regards, it's just an update. It's just good for them to know what's going on. There's nothing necessary for them to contribute. Other times, it's problem solving, it's brainstorming, it's identifying unique opportunities. And then the same is true of new prospects. Some conversations around prospects are really quick. There are no red flags, there are no issues, there's no friction in the process. Everything's moving smoothly, executing as planned. Other times, maybe something starts lingering. Maybe there was an additional conversation outside the sales process that warrants an additional conversation. Maybe someone has stopped responding to the sales process, and it creates a unique reservation in our mind. And in the revenue meeting, it gives us an opportunity to kind of work through those. The last thing I'll say about that section of the meeting and why I think the collaborative nature with the team is so valuable is everyone's looking through a different lens. Mike's bringing the lens of an owner and the CEO of the company, which is a different perspective. Kristen's bringing really this mindset and this lens of client service and team capacity and whether or not it's a good fit for our team. I'm bringing the lens of I love closing deals, and I've met with the client multiple times. And so, trying to push things forward. Bob, the creative director for Square 2, he might have a unique perspective as the creative director, and maybe something he's seen with an existing client. And so the input from people in different positions with different perspective and different ideas makes the overall experience for the prospect significantly better, because we're not just bringing to bear on the sales journey for the prospect my own limited and singular perspective. So lots and lots of value in terms of the collaborative effort from our team to identify and troubleshoot and brainstorm opportunities, and then be accountable, because the meetings are weekly at the exact same time. We're reporting the data in 90.io, so we're always accountable to those numbers. And you take all that together, and it really gives us a level of accountability and opportunity to really do a good job in the sales process.
Yeah, that's a lot. That's some really good commentary. Maybe you could think a little bit about an example where we talked about an opportunity, and maybe we could talk about that a little bit. While you're thinking about that, let me just elaborate a little bit on a few of the things you said. First of all, when you're looking at a CRM and we, specifically like deals in stages, right? There can be a lot in there. And we're a relatively small company. I think we have a relatively manageable set of deals. But if you were a bigger company and you had 2 or 3 times the amount of opportunities we have at Square 2, you might be thinking to yourself, how am I possibly going to do this? But it's a very scalable process. So let me talk to the audience a little bit about how we do it at Square 2. So, Cade's right. We start with clients. Okay, so what opportunities do we have at clients? Now, we only work with, I think we might have 40 clients in the shop now, and most of them are just, we're doing what we agreed to do. There's not additional opportunities there. And we're also not hard selling clients to buy things that they don't necessarily need. So, you might be talking about 4 or 5 opportunities that client services has already identified, and they're working to basically push over the finish line this week. And I think that's the big filter here, because this is not all opportunities. These are just the opportunities that are about to close. What do we need to do to get them over the finish line this week, right? Cade's right. We have this meeting every single week. So I'm always starting, because I'm generally the one that asks this question in our meeting. I'm always starting at the end of the process, right? So I know you've been talking to this client for 3 months about a new website, but you said they were about to decide this week. What do we have to do to get them to decide, right? Do we have to give them a discount? We don't typically do that, but it's worth asking, right? Is price the issue? Do we have to look at the schedule? Is schedule the issue? Is it a resource issue? Does the company not have the resource? Do we not have the resources lined up to take care of this for them when they want it taken care of? Who are we talking to? Have we pushed it up their food chain to make sure that their executives are involved in it also, so we can get quick sign off? Is the paperwork with legal, maybe that's something we need to talk about. So, understanding where the late stage opportunities are, to Cade's point, gives everybody in this meeting, and it's a cross-functional team, an opportunity to look at this and be like, we did something like this similar for these other people. Let's see if they want to do that, right? So there's only a handful of opportunities on the current client side. When we get to the sales side, the new prospect opportunities, it's the same thing. We're starting at the very end, right? Who's about to close, and what do we need to do to get them over the finish line? And with prospects, it's actually easier, because maybe we can't get the last meeting on the books because everybody's busy, right? Cade's trying to book a meeting with Kristen and me and Kevin, our technical guy. Maybe I need to like let some people out of a meeting so they can meet with the prospect. Like that's an easy solve for an issue. If Cade's saying, I just can't get you guys together to talk to these guys. We need one more meeting to close this. Everybody's busy. No problem. Let's cancel this meeting. Let's put this prospect above some of the other things we're doing, and let's get that meeting in the next day or two. It could be there's some terms that they're sticky with. We can discuss those. There could be they're looking for one more reference. Well, how do we get them one more reference? Like who does the team think would be good for that, right? Those are the things that come up when you're talking about late stage opportunities. It's usually one little rock or one little obstacle that you need to push past to get the deal done. And again, even on our prospect side, you might be talking about 3 or 4 of those, right? I'm not talking about people that Cade's in the middle of a sales process with, or we're not talking about someone that hasn't seen recommendations yet. These are people that should be signing, and for some reason they're not. Those are the things we want to talk about. There's also contextual topics that come up from time to time. We actually had one, Cade. They maybe this is the one you're thinking about for our example, but they basically had one project they wanted us to help them with, but they wanted a partner long-term, right? And we were kind of at the end, like trying to decide, well, do we get the one deal done or do we try to get both deals done? And we ended up just helping them focus and letting us focus on the one deal. And then we'll talk about the longer term relationship, after we get started. So, sometimes just talking that through and getting everyone on the same page to agree with our go-to-market strategy around particular opportunities is extremely helpful also. Anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, no, that's a perfect example where you have a prospect and the longer you work with them, the more opportunities are created. So then you're at this, kind of branch in the road. Do you just focus on closing the deal that you've been working on for 60 days and care for them and serve them in that, and then let their relationship grow from there? Or do we make this strategic decision that we're going to kind of go for all of it? And so maybe we need to go backwards in the process in order to go forward. So it's a perfect example of something that's right there at the finish line. You can't have that conversation via email or Slack. There's too much nuance. There's too much context that needs to be shared. And so the revenue meeting is a perfect place to talk about that. But another client that has a huge North American presence, but their headquarters is actually in another country. And so, you have dynamics like that where maybe North America is ready to move forward, but then kind of last minute, HQ in France decides, what about this other project? So similar in nature, but even more complicated because you have 4 or 5 people in France that you're dealing with now. You have 2 people you're dealing with in North America. And so you need to be able to converse as a team to say, okay, how do we want to strategically, handle this? First, how do we bring the most value to the prospect? And then second, what do we think is the best approach in the sales process to be able to care for them? So those are the kinds of conversations you're able to have in a meeting on a weekly basis. When you have the number of opportunities that we do, which like you said, is not near as much as some $100 million or $200 million company, right, you need the time and space to be able to creatively think about some of the deals and how you can best serve them in the process in order to close the deals and then be able to serve them. So those are a few practical examples of the kind of conversations we have in the meetings.
Yeah, I think, and then we'll move on a little bit, but I think the other interesting aspect of this is, and we talked about it, we kind of like briefly just, I mentioned it a couple of times, sales process. So critical today. I generally feel like it will make or break your company. If you have an amazing sales process, you're going to thrive. If you don't, you're going to struggle. And the farther you get into it, the more important the process gets, because there's more, like if you're having an initial meeting with someone and your process isn't great and you blow it, okay, that's not great either, but at least you haven't invested a lot of time in it, right? Like, okay, fine. But if you're down 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 5 weeks into a process, you don't want a negative outcome. Like I always say, get to know early. And by know, I mean N-O, not K-N-O-W, right? We want to get to know either we don't want to work them or they don't want to work with us very, very early in the sales process. You don't want to get to know at the very end. So you have this process going on, this experience that you're creating for them. You don't want to blow it at the end. And by talking about these opportunities, It might be as simple as, oh, let's get them on the phone with Bob, our creative director. They have some concerns about copy. Let's let them talk to Bob. Bob, when are you available? Tomorrow? Great. I'm going to schedule a meeting. Bang, here we go. Right. So there's so many interesting ideas that come up when you're talking about these opportunities. And the other thing that's nice about these revenue team meetings in the L10s are, as soon as these ideas come up, they get documented as to-dos. So in our example, the client is worried about content. We agree they should talk to Bob, our creative director, who's our content specialist. Kate goes, okay, I'm going to take the to-do. I'm going to schedule a meeting with these guys. Bob says, okay, I'm going to look up some examples of some content we did for similar companies, so I'm prepared. And they both have to-dos that are documented. Kate says, I'm going to schedule the meeting. He does it. Everything's tight and buttoned up. Everyone knows exactly what's going to happen and who's doing what, because it's all part of this meeting. And when you operate efficiently like this isn't an hour-long conversation about opportunities. We can cover all these opportunities in 10 or 15 minutes and then move on to some of the other things that we're going to talk to at this revenue team meeting. Sometimes this conversation also surfaces larger issues that maybe there is actually a process issue at the back end of the sales process. Okay, let's make that an issue. Let's process that issue during the IDS section, which is identify, discuss, and solve. And let's really try to solve this sales process issue so we don't keep dealing with these this continual late stage sales opportunity stuck stuff that keeps coming up every single meeting. So there's a lot kind of intertwined here with the way these meetings run and how much value they add to the organization. But I would highly recommend people start considering this type of meeting, this type of system, and this opportunity to brainstorm late stage sales opportunities. Before I move on, this is also done well because marketing, sales, and generally customer service are all in this revenue team meeting. So you have all the people there who can figure this stuff out, make decisions associated with it. It's super helpful for marketing to hear what the obstacles are in the late stage. Maybe that means that's a content opportunity, earlier stage. Maybe there's a sales support solution that can be uncovered here to prevent these late stage opportunities from continuing to pop up. Obviously, you have sales participating. You're not going to have every single sales rep, but if you have the sales manager who's here, then they basically represent every single rep and they know where all the opportunities are, and they can share some of these ideas across rep as well. That's helpful. And the same thing for customer service. You're going to have a customer service manager who can share with the customer service reps, hey, here's how we're going to tackle these particular revenue opportunities going forward. So there's just so much efficiency built into this process that it does so much for organizations who are really trying to hit that revenue number every single month.
Yeah, just to piggyback on a thought you shared there in terms of how, client service and sales and marketing are all together having these conversations. You could argue that the most critical thing for any business to be able to know to be successful would be their audience, to be their buyer persona, to know their pain points, to know their needs, to know what they are really looking for. And so when you have these three different groups sharing, ideas and knowledge around existing clients as well as prospects, it gives all of us an opportunity to really lean into who our audience is and the value they're looking for, the problems they're trying to solve, which in theory then makes us good at everything else downstream from that. Companies, when they get disconnected from their audience is when they really start to make poor decisions. And the fact that all three of those groups are together having these conversations, I believe helps Square 2 avoid getting disconnected from really our ultimate mission, which is to serve our customer and to, alleviate and solve for their pain points and their needs. So I think what you said is really critical and is real value add of all of us being together in this meeting.
Yeah, I agree. All right, cool. So let's kind of move this forward a little bit. So we kind of talked about this a little bit, but just to make sure we put a pin in it. So, when we're leading this revenue review conversation, you want to try to model some of the things that we talked about before. You don't want to talk about every opportunity. You only want to talk about those that are, about to close or expected to close, or you've been told are going to close. If Kate says to me, oh, this deal's going to close this week and we're meeting at the revenue team meeting, I'm going to ask, what do we need to do to get it done? Right? Do they have a contract? Do they have any questions about the contract? What else do they need from us? So it's really a very focused almost laser beam approach on those opportunities that are imminently going to close. And so generally, Cade is leading this part of the conversation. He's sharing what's going on with these particular deals. I tend to ask a lot of questions, and then the rest of the team kind of responds with whatever our action plan is going to be in terms of ideas or suggestions or recommendations or things that we might have done before in the past, or assets we might have that we can share. And then Cade takes the feedback on those particular deals and takes the to-dos to follow up with them. And the same thing on the customer side. Kristen, who's our director of client services, she's going through the opportunities that we have on the client side. I'm asking questions. We're brainstorming a little bit on what needs to get done to get that paperwork back to us and for us to lock it in as revenue for the month. And then she and her team are taking the to-dos to execute the follow-up and provide us with feedback on what happened before the end of the week. So that's the leading of the revenue team part here is there are people that run the meeting, but they're really more moderators. I feel like this section of the meeting is more for Kate and Kristen to brief the rest of us on what's going on, and then for the rest of us to ask questions and provide some good ideas and brainstorming to move it forward. So that's who's leading this section of the meeting. And in terms of who attends this revenue team meeting, it's really everybody that's associated with revenue generation at the company. So we recently extended our revenue team meeting a little bit to include the people responsible for some of our assets, like the website, and also the team that helps us with our own technology from a reporting and an automation perspective. So, if you have a RevOps person, I would suggest they attend this meeting also. Again, if you're not familiar with revenue operations, that's the group or person or people who are responsible for keeping your technology working properly, making sure that your data is accurate and in the right place, making sure that your dashboards and reports are showing the right numbers, making sure that your automation is firing properly, that any integrations are running properly, maybe even setting up and staging landing pages, website pages, emails, posts that are coming up that week. So depending on how deep you stretch, traditional marketing support on a platform into a technology person's area of responsibility might be considered revenue operations. Even as far as keeping the CRM up to date is revenue operations as well. Like, are the deal stages still accurate? Are all the sales sequences firing? Are people getting notified when new deals come in? Are we rotating leads correctly, either by geography or whoever's up next? Like all those things are important revenue operations. And we felt like we needed to have that person in our revenue team meeting to make sure that the technology is supporting us. So, I would say anyone who touches revenue, certainly from a management or leadership team perspective, would probably need to be in your revenue team meeting and talking about and listening to the conversations around these late stage sales opportunities. And I could guarantee they will all have productive contributions to help you close deals faster and a little more consistently. Anything you want to add to that, Kate?
Well, just how critical it is that marketing and sales are aligned, which is why so much of our marketing team is a part of it. I mean, marketing exists to serve sales, and sales can exist in some part to serve marketing. I mean, they really should be working together if it's going to be effective. And so just to emphasize how important that is for both of those teams to be represented. And, we're going through a stage right now where we're really focused on our marketing efforts and our revenue generation efforts. And so they're really critical to this meeting. So I think that's an important part to emphasize.
Yeah, it didn't really occur to me prior to, but as I'm listening to you talk, my experience, look, I've been in Square 2 for 20 years. I've probably talked to thousands of companies at this point over the years. And I generally find that most companies are not putting enough emphasis on this part of their business. So they obviously have sales activities, and most of them have some kind of sales management or sales leadership, and most companies have sales reps. But I feel like there's not a ton of attention paid to this part of the business in this way. yes, sales knows what their quotas are. Yes, sales reps know what their quotas are. It almost seems like to me, based on my experience, that sales is happening to them as opposed to them making sales happen. And I think this is one way to kind of get out in front of sales and get marketing doing the kinds of things they need to do to generate leads, and then make sure that everyone in sales is doing everything they can to turn those leads into sales opportunities and close them. And we're only talking about a 90-minute meeting here, right? So 90 minutes of your week is spent working with marketing and working with customer service to hit your revenue goals. And we're only talking about 10 to 15 minutes of that 90 minutes is spent like reviewing these opportunities and brainstorming these opportunities. The rest of the meeting is going to be spent coming up with ideas around other revenue related things, marketing campaigns, things like that. So
yeah, I think another way of looking at exactly what you're saying is when I think about the sales calls that we have, I would say 99% of them are only led by the marketing team. Sales has never even represented, in the sales process. And I think that gives you a good indication of how disconnected many organizations are from a sales and marketing alignment perspective. So, I mean, I'm glad you brought that up, and it's spot on, and I think you see that reflected, just even in our conversations with our prospects.
Yeah. So one of the other questions, I mean, the goal, one of the things I mentioned at the beginning of the show is we want to talk about the goals of having a session like this, and I think the goals are real clear. The goals are close more deals, right? So increase your close rate. If you're talking about opportunities that are about to close and you're brainstorming them, you're going to get better at it. You're going to install things into your process that make you better across the entire enterprise at closing deals. So, to me, there's no downside, there's no risk, there's no negative to having these conversations. Your company is going to get better at closing new customers, and you're going to have a higher close rate, which everybody wants, by the way. You're also going to have a shorter sales cycle, because instead of leaving these sales reps to kind of flounder with these deals for, at least a couple of days or a week or 2 weeks longer than they need to, you're discussing them and you're acting immediately to help close them. So it's going to shorten your sales cycle. And I can't even tell you how you'll be able to quantify a shortened sales cycle. It's like the multiplier effect. If it's taking you 60 days to close deals and you can now close them in 45, like, you're basically getting like an extra month of sales or more. I'm not good at math. Everybody knows math is not my strong suit, but you're basically getting like an extra month and a half of selling by shortening the sales cycle. So the goals are real clear. Make sure everyone is working efficiently on these late stage opportunities, improve your close rate, and shorten your sales cycle. It will be a direct outcome of a session like this. And again, to spend 10 or 15 minutes on it to move the needle like that seems pretty significant to me. And the last part of this, and again, we talked about this briefly, but just to go in, is how detailed do you go and how many opportunities should you review? And I think that's going to be company by company. Like we said, you only want to talk about those that are about to close. So, if you're a big sales organization, you might have so many that are about to close that you need another filter in there. Maybe it's those that are about to close that seem particularly challenged, or maybe those that were supposed to close last week and didn't close last week, and now you're waiting for them to close this week. That would kind of filter it down even more. You want to come up with a manageable number that you're discussing here. I wouldn't think you want to go much beyond 10 deals. I think if you're going into more deals than that, then you probably need to filter them a bit more. And I think you really only want to understand what's going on right now with those deals. Again, like, you should come to that meeting having looked in the CRM and kind of understand the high level and the details that are in the CRM. But when you're talking about these opportunities with the sales leaderships that are working on them, you really just want to understand the nuances. You want to understand what's going on. When was the last time you talked to them? What did you talk about? What do you think the issues are? Things that you probably can't capture in the CRM in the amount of detail you can have in a conversation. So it's specific. I wouldn't say it's incredibly detailed. And also understand, when you start doing this, you might not get through a ton, but as you do more and more of these, and if you're going to do them every week, before you know it, you'll be getting through them very efficiently. I think when we started, we kind of like slogged through it a little bit. I had to keep reminding people like, no, just those deals at the very end of the pipeline, anything, early or middle, we don't have to talk about in this particular meeting. So enough to get enough detail so that you can provide some good recommendations and some good next steps and do some good brainstorming on how you're going to get the deal closed and get it closed quickly. And then in terms of number of opportunities, just those that are at the very end, whatever that means for your particular company. Anything you want to add to that, Gabe?
No, I like your emphasis on really identifying a singular focus of that time, so you don't get distracted. And like you said, it'll vary from organization to organization, but really clarifying and creating urgency around the later stage deals that are directly impacting your revenue goals that month, I think is an important distinction that you're making. So
yeah. I mean, I think salespeople tend to have a sense of urgency, but maybe not all of them have the same sense of urgency as the company might or as leadership might. So, instilling that sense of urgency around sales, I think is important. I also think it's a great cultural imperative for sales to understand sense of urgencies and understand the importance of sales cycle days and close rate and really working on those numbers and how important those are. So again, you're reinforcing these on a regular basis in this meeting. And again, you're documenting whatever massive and immediate action you need to take to get them closed, which again, I think sometimes is missed too. Like, oh, okay, you're going to close that this week? Okay, great. Let's go out to lunch. Like, no, that's not really the right conversation. It should be like, what are you doing this week to get them closed? Let me hear it from you. Oh, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. I have to send them that. I got to call this person. Like, that's what you want to hear in this conversation that I think a lot of people miss when they don't have a session like this.
I think that's really well said. I mean, back to your point around sense of urgency and sales reps. I mean, one of the challenges of sales is just almost like the monotony of every day you need to focus on the same things. One of the real values of having these weekly revenue meetings is it creates habit. It creates consistency and it creates accountability for all involved, but particularly the people responsible for sales. So I think there's a lot of value, to having the consistent meeting that helps create a habit of urgency instead of just hit or miss, depending on, what time of month it is and how regularly you're meeting and things like that. So it's really important to be consistent.
Yeah, it's a really good point. And before we wrap up, I'll just kind of come full circle with this revenue team meeting. It's shocking how most companies have a system for paying people, have a system for taking care of finance, have a system for hiring people, have a system for onboarding people, have a system for how they manufacture what they do, or a system for how they deliver the services that they do. But when it comes to revenue, hardly anyone has a system. So this idea that you can have a system for revenue generation that includes process, that includes strategy, that includes tactics, that includes campaigns, that includes technology, that includes resources, all those things that are critical to making revenue generation a system, it's available to you, right? Whether you figure this out on your own, whether you use our RGS, which is our revenue generation system, or some other system for revenue, I really want to encourage people to start thinking more about revenue from a systems approach. And this meeting that we've been talking about here, the revenue team meeting, is just one portion of that. So, Kate, I'm going to wrap up. Anything else you want to add?
Nope, I think we've covered it.
Awesome. Thanks for filling in. I really appreciate it. So we just talked about in season 2, episode 16, the importance of the late stage sales opportunity brainstorming session as part of the revenue team meeting that is part of the RGS revenue generation system. I hope to see everybody for episode 17 next week, where we're going to be talking about rethinking customer service to drive more revenue. If I had to pick one thing, Cade, where people are really weak from a revenue perspective, it's looking at their current customers. So we'll tackle that in depth next week when we come at you with episode 17 of season 2. Let me just remind everybody, if you like the show, go check us out on YouTube. Square 2 Marketing has a channel on YouTube. All of the What's Wrong with Revenue shows for season 1 and 2 are posted there. We post a new one every single Thursday morning. You can go there, you can subscribe, you can watch the show, and you can leave us comments. We really appreciate the comments. Thanks for everybody that does that. If you want to get the show on the Square 2 website, head on over to our free streaming service, Square 2 Plus, located at square2marketing.com/square2plus. It's just like Netflix. We have channels for CMOs, CEOs, CROs. We have a HubSpot channel. All of the fresh audio and video content that Square 2 publishes gets posted to Square 2 Plus, and you can subscribe to the service, and we'll let you know via email when we put new content out there. And last but not least, if you're into audio content, this show is a podcast. Go check it out on all your favorite podcast platforms. Kate, thanks so much for joining me and filling in for Eric. I really appreciate it. Have a good rest of your day, and we'll see everybody next week.
Thanks, man.